Before I start, I'm just going to give a few sentences about myself. So I'm a core Polkadot and SERGEJ contributor. I'm also a member of the Polkadot Technical Fellowship. I joined from the start, and I'm also a graduate of the Polkadot Blockchain Academy, which was held in Berkeley. It's the third cohort. And of course, I'm the founder and lead developer of RegionX. So before I start talking about CORETIME marketplaces and the new things, I think it's pretty important to first look back at the previous model, at the slot auctions, the agile CORETIME, see what are the benefits, some of the shortcomings, and what can maybe be used from the slot auctions and re-implemented in agile CORETIME to improve the procurement process. So let's start with the slot auction model. So first of all, what is exactly the reason why we need something like this? Well, obviously, Polkadot has a limited amount of resources, so it needs a way to somewhat effectively be able to share it to decide on what projects, what tasks should use this CORETIME. And for this purpose, we initially had the slot auction model, which is the predecessor of the agile CORETIME model. We often talk about the bad side of it, and these things are actually fixed with agile CORETIME model, but there are actually some things that it provides that agile CORETIME does not solve out of the box. So what are the good things? Well, projects that wanted to deploy on Polkadot had an option to utilize crowd loans. And the reason why this is interesting is because the team itself did not need to actually finance the slot itself. Instead, if it has a good community support, the DOT token holders support the project, it can rely actually on the community to get this slot. It is of course up to the parachain, but often we could see that it would offer some kind of reward, some incentives for people to actually help it get a slot. And this way, a community had a say in what projects actually get deployed on Polkadot, what do they think is good to have on Polkadot, and maybe what not. So this made the slot auction process somewhat decentralized because anyone had a say in it. So anyone who had DOT tokens could decide is this project worth supporting or not. And this is actually something that we do not have in the agile CORETIME model as it is by itself. Now the bad. These are not the worst things about it, but these things are actually kind of solved by agile CORETIME. So there is absolutely not really cost predictability for parachains. Parachains after getting a slot, they cannot really predict how much they will need to reserve to get a slot again after 2 years once their lease expires. So this is not really good for many projects building on Polkadot. Another thing is that a lot of resources were wasted. So basically, each core was allocated to a single parachain, even though most of them did not need this entire core. And because of this, not as many projects can potentially be deployed on Polkadot. This is basically bounded by the number of cores Polkadot offers, which is pretty much limited. So in that sense, it was wasting core time, even though most projects that were deployed were not using its full potential. And the third thing is it did not really generate the revenue for the Polkadot ecosystem. It did require tokens to get locked, but did not generate revenue. Neither did it burn the tokens. It was not really ideal. And the ugly part of it is that the CORETIME allocation is very rigid. So as I said, each parachain got allocated an entire core, and we have collected data, and it's kind of already known that most of these parachains do not need nearly as much as an entire core's resources. Moonbeam is here one example. It is one of the parachains that actually has quite a lot of users and transactions, but even in its current state, it is still kind of consuming around 30% of the resources, sometimes maybe a bit more, but around 30%. So this just shows that like really most of these projects do not need an entire core to operate on Polkadot. Another thing is that core time had to be allocated for at least 6 months. Now this is kind of good for like maybe long-term projects, but it's really not good for projects that are maybe of shorter scope or are meant for as an experiment. So it's really only supports some projects that are really from the start looking long-term. And this made it pretty inefficient for smaller teams to even deploy on Polkadot because of these strict requirements that projects have. Now, are all of these problems actually like fixed with Agile core time? And it kind of depends, because even the things that are not fixed with Agile core time can be fixed because of the different platform we have with it. It is in itself not solving most of these things. Like the rigidity is partially removed, but projects still need to buy an entire core from the core time chain, and they can only buy cores which last 1 month. So it's a bit better than the option we had with 6 months to 2 years. But like in itself, the core system only provides cores that can be full cores that can be bought from the bulk sale. Now, a revenue stream, this is dependent on whether we are going to burn it or not. But essentially, we have these tokens actually spent. They are no longer really reusable in case they are burned. So there is actually some kind of revenue from this core time system. And all of this logic is like placed on a dedicated core time chain, so it's no longer located on the relay chain. Instead, it's like on its own dedicated chain, and it provides this minimal functionality, but it's unopinionated, and it provides a much better infrastructure on top of which we can build. Now, there are still a lot of like remaining issues. The system still only, as I said, the system still only offers entire cores. The price predictability is fixed only for projects that do get an entire core. So it's still better than what we had with the slot auction model, but this is only offered for projects that do actually hold an entire core. So this is not available for teams that maybe do not need an entire core, so they end up using smaller parts of it. And something that we had in the slot auction model was like this community involvement. We no longer have this. It is removed, but it is indeed possible to re-implement it, and that's basically what we are also doing at Region X. We are reintroducing the community into the system. And a lot of resources are wasted. This goes back to the first point, that parachain teams still only have the option to get an entire core. So a lot of them really do not need that much resources. So still a lot of it is wasted. So full core owners are kind of treated like first-class citizens. They have the option to renew their core, and this is something that's good for existing projects because they can transition to the new model, and they can be sure that they are always able to renew core time, and there is always core time available to them. But again, as shown, not many projects actually use an entire core, so it's still not really clear if it's a good decision for them to keep buying an entire core, even though they get this benefit, but do not end up using all of its potential. And the question that comes up is, where can this, if the system only provides like full cores, where can projects that do not utilize that much resources get like smaller chunks of core time. And essentially, because we have a much better platform now, we can have community projects like RegionX or some other projects that do actually solve these problems thanks to the infrastructure that is provided to us. So when thinking about how can we solve these problems, it's important to understand who actually needs core time. A lot of us often like compare it to cloud computing, but there is actually a pretty important difference between those two. The main difference is that most of these projects like share the goal to be self-governing, like decentralized entities. And if that's the case, procuring core time, like assigning the task of core time procurement to some specific individuals is not really in that spirit. And this is why we think that something that was used in the slot auction model is really interesting to have the community decide what projects get core time allocated. And of course, projects can always self-finance this, but if they do have community support, they can always rely on the community and maybe provide some incentives. So what are we building at RegionX? We are building a couple of things. We are offering a platform where core time that was purchased from the bulk sale can be traded. So essentially, anyone who purchased the core from the bulk sale can partition it or interlace and sell it in like smaller chunks on the market for some profit. Other than that, we are also adding the community component back into the system. This is something that I'm going to talk about a bit more in the upcoming slides. And other than that, we are also working on modules for integrating with this marketplace and getting the community involved. And we are also working on tools for tracking core time consumption so that parachains in the first place are aware how much core time they actually need to be able to decide what is the best route for them to take. So how are we bringing the community component back? Well, we have something that we call the order model, and it basically is a multi-step process. So each parachain would decide via its, like based on some data, previous data expectations, how much core time it actually needs. This is something that is up to the parachains to decide, but would probably set by their own governance systems. And they will decide how much resources do they actually need based on the data and based on their future expectations. Once that's defined, using the modules that we are creating or they can implement themselves, they would create automatically what we call like core time orders. And these orders would define what are the requirements for each parachain. So essentially, does it need half a core's resources or a third? So this is something that is set by the parachain's governance system. And based on this, orders are created to this RegionX platform where they are kept. And each of these orders initially has no real value. This means that we provide the functionality for anyone using their DOT tokens to be able to contribute to this order. So it's essentially like a crowdfunding mechanism where anyone that holds DOT tokens can contribute to an order, and this way help it stand out, and any of the core time traders who are at the same time tracking the core time chain and also the available orders, they are monitoring both of these, and once they see actually a profitable opportunity, they will end up selling core time. These core time traders also have the possibility to track the core time marketplace that we provide, so they, like the core time chain is not the only option. The other option is to track what are the regions CORETIME regions available on this secondary marketplace. And once they see a profitable opportunity, end up selling CORETIME to the order, and this way the parachain would get it assigned to itself, and the trader would receive the tokens that were collected by the community. And as within the the crowd loan model, most of these parachains were providing some kind of incentives for user to do so. Of course, this is also something that the parachain itself defines, and we will probably see parachains defining some incentives for the users, or maybe some are just confident enough that their parachain is useful for others, and someone who is actually relying on this can end up contributing to an order even if they are not receiving direct incentives. We can also see the parachain itself from its treasury adding value to its orders, so contributing to the order itself. Okay, so who can trade CORETIME? Well, we are allowing, of course, anyone to trade CORETIME. Like, as I said, there are two possibilities to get CORETIME from. So first of it is the bulk sale, where this entire course can be bought. And the other option is to track the secondary marketplace, and from there see the regions that are offered. And once there is a profitable opportunity, fulfill some of the orders. Of course, this is something that should be done by automated programs that define the rules based on which they make these decisions. So, to the next slide. We also want to make this integration process easy for parachains, and we are doing so by also working on some modules that can be integrated by anyone, and we want it to be highly customizable, very much generic, so that parachains can define the rules on how do they decide how much CORETIME they need, how do they incentivize the users, the contributors, and other things. So our goal is to make this something that is very highly customizable. So what are the future plans? We are currently working on the parachain. We have essentially got it deployed on Rococo. There are some issues there because there is like a reduced number of validators, but that's something we are currently testing and working on. We will soon make this available to the public to test. We are also working on these highly customizable and pretty generic modules that any parachain can integrate into their system, and using which they can get CORETIME, smaller chunks of CORETIME, using this order model or from the marketplace. The Kusama launch is planned by the end of August, but more likely in September, because we want to do some more testing. We are also working on these modules, and we want to have all of this kind of prepared. The Polkadot launch, that's also depending on how soon we can get the audit, because for Polkadot we want to get everything audited and be sure that it's working as supposed, so that other parachains are confident when integrating with the system. Okay. So, in case there are any questions, you can, we have time, you can ask them now, or if not at the moment, you can reach out at any of these, and also feel free to ask something after the presentation.